Hello everyone and welcome to today's session where we'll be talking about law enforcement and we'll be focusing on crime analysis. My name is Wenslav Simiu and I'll be taking you through this webinar today. So first, let's look at ArcGIS platform, which actually allows organizations to manage their GIS platform, and you can share. And apart from that, of course, you can access a lot of content and more capabilities like insights in our platform. So you'll first have the section where you can actually add data to your portal through the server or online content and services. And then after that data is available, you can access this data via different devices. And you'll realize that this is a very robust system. And because of that, let's go to some of the reasons why you will be interested in ArcGIS. So first, ArcGIS is a system of record, right? And you can archive crime data. And as we speak currently in most of our police force, we are using manual ways of storing crime data where we have the occurrence books. And for instance, in Uganda, we have the station diaries. And so once we have this data saved, or rather this data captured this way, then what do we do when we want to analyze trends, right? It becomes a bit difficult to actually analyze trends using this manual crime data storage kind of facilities. And then ArcGIS is also a system of engagement, and you'll realize we have a lot of digitization that can be done, and this digitization can help for the field officers, for instance, the patrol. This can really help in the reconnaissance, and also the patterns. For instance, a command officer can manage from the office, and ArcGIS is also a system of insights. So you'll realize that we have currently the police force has a software that they use. All right, like for instance, we have a software that is preferred by the forensic investigators, like for instance, the IBM i2, which is used mostly for the call records analytics. And you'll realize that the only section that maybe, this is a very robust tool in itself, I must say. But now, when you look at the where, that is the component that you may want to probably fill in with ArcGIS, because when you're analyzing cells and patterns, you also want to, for instance, add the capacity for analyzing the call records based on the location intelligence kind of aspect. And that's what ArcGIS helps you to build on. It gives you the power of where, and using that, the investigators can even get more insights on the same, and that will be really helpful as an additional capability. All right, so that actually summarizes the crime mapping, crime analysis, and the crime investigation kind of general why. And those are some of the advantages listed right there. So I figured because we may have some people in this webinar who have used ArcMap, I just wanted to actually touch on ArcGIS Pro, because this solution is based on ArcGIS Pro, which is another desktop application, another ArcGIS desktop application. And you'll realize, unlike ArcMap, ArcGIS is 64-bit multi-threaded, so it's really faster in terms of its operations, and it utilizes more, of course, RAM, and it has combined 2D and 3D. You can actually do 3D analysis as well, all right? And you can do this in multiple maps and layouts. You can open different tabs with different maps, and you can create different layouts and share them differently. You can have a horizontal layout and a vertical layout at the same time differently, and even you can actually compare them back to back. Unlike in ArcMap, where you just have one layout, which you actually change down there to layout mode, and then you create your layout. So this ArcGIS Pro is more connected to WebGIS, and it has a simplified user interface. And apart from that, we have very many open source tools and free industry solutions, like the one we are focusing on today, which is the crime analysis. So that's what we are talking about today. And the crime analysis tool, or rather solution, is basically focused for the crime analysts in the law enforcement to be able to easily go through the analysis functions like scanning, responding, and assessing. You can have the add-in added directly to your ArcGIS Pro, and I'm going to be demonstrating how to use the add-in in my ArcGIS Pro. And of course, you can see a couple of tools available there which will be able to do data management, analysis, which is tactical and strategic, investigative analysis, and also information sharing, where you'll see charts and other formats which have also been improved as well. So the solutions group basically helps you to collect data, analyze, disseminate functionalities, and then get the feedback. And this is a continuous cycle. And we're going to be looking at that in our demonstration as well. It's a continuous cycle which you'll be doing back to back. All right. So these are some of the groups and some of the explanations. So the ones that we're going to be mentioning are data management, where we're actually just going to be talking about how you can import different kind of data from different facilities. And then we're going to focus more on the analysis section, where we are going to be looking at the different tools that have been made available to you to be able to analyze the data that you have. And then, of course, the create and share information, where you can actually share your data to, for instance, ArcGIS Online and what have you. So let's look at this toolbar. So I've just snipped it from the ArcGIS Pro. So this is the crime analysis toolbar solution for ArcGIS Pro, and I've just snipped it, and you can have a look at it. Just take a look through. Let me use my mouse to probably take you through it. So this area right here, this is the data management area. This area here is the selection area, where we have tools for selection, and you'll realize there is a new tool here, selection by date and time, which is not among the out-of-the-box tools in the ArcGIS Pro. We have the tactical and strategic analysis section here, where we have some out-of-the-box tools available, and we have new tools. We'll discuss that in another slide. And then we have the investigative analysis here, where you can see we even have cell phone analysis, which, as I was talking about, we'll get more into. But this can now give you the where, all right, where the cell phone are being made, some cell phone calls are being made, and what have you. And then we have the create and share information here, where you can have charts and what have you. So you should note that it's free. First of all, this solution is added to your ArcGIS Pro for free, as long as you have the user license. And then, of course, it's the reason why we did this, we added this toolbar, is to help analysts to just get familiar with desktop ArcGIS. So if you are in the law enforcement section and you work as, for instance, an investigator, you don't need to come to ArcGIS Pro and focus on maybe all the other out-of-the-box functionalities. You just go straight to your toolbar, and you can access all these functions, and you can actually do your analysis very easily. And that is why we say it helps the existing analysis transition to ArcGIS Pro even more, to be even easier. So kindly note that it's only available in Pro, and I noticed that maybe some of us are using ArcMap, so kindly note that this toolbar is only available in ArcGIS Pro. So on data management, as I said, you can actually have data currently. So this is when, for instance, you're doing migration. So you can have data in Excel, you can have data in very many formats, right? So you can actually have this data imported in those formats. You can geocode addresses. So for instance, if you have, you can have an address like that is not in a XY kind of format, is not in a longitude, latitude kind of format. Let's say Cusco Center, 3rd floor, Upper Hill, Nairobi. You can have that geocoded, and you can have the longitude and latitude or the XY coordinates from the same. So you can enhance your attribute data in this data management section. And of course, you can import records. And importing records has been really made easier and better because you can actually configure these records and make sure that in your configuration you can actually make it automatic, all right? So that records are now easier to add to your map. So these are some of the tools that can be used for enhancing your attribute data. And of course, I talked about enhancing data. So let's talk of, for instance, if we mention enrich, where you can actually have a district layer somewhere and you want to add population data to it, you can use the enrich. For instance, the append attributes to polygon, you can add a certain, for instance, crime layer that happened in a certain area. You can add it to your data to make it easier to understand. And then we have the extract date paths to field, where you can actually have, let's say, a certain date, all right? And the date has the year, the month, the day, the time. You can actually have this extracted, all right? You can have the day, for instance, Monday, Tuesday, and so on. You can have the weekday field created out of the same. We'll look at this in the demonstration, and of course the other features, all right? So the analysis section, which will be our key focus in today's presentation, we have some existing tools that are, of course, out of the box. And these are like the summary statistics. And if you've been using ArcGIS Pro, you may have encountered some of these tools, or in your day-to-day analysis, you may have used some of these, of course, these tools. So buffer, the kernel density, which requires a statistical analyst license. So you may want to get that to enjoy the kernel density tool. We have the optimized hotspot, and then we have the emerging hotspot as well. So those are the out-of-the-box solution. But we have new tools, which of course now we are going to be, which is going to be our focus today. We have the 80-20 analysis tool, and 80-20 analysis tool actually shows you the volumes of where, for instance, let's say crime is happening a lot in a certain area. This will really help you to see the volumes of where crime is happening, and this can actually be the focal point of your attention, right? So you can actually focus more on those points. We have the incident count, and the incident count, you can actually see crimes in a certain region. Let's say we have region X, region B. So let's say Nairobi as a region, for instance, you can have the incident count tool, which can actually show you these crimes in this area, all right? The percentage change now can help you see, for instance, this happened last month and this happened this month. This is the percentage change. This area improved. This area became, there are more crimes in this area, for instance. And then we have the density change, which can actually combine the kernel density analysis, and then you can have those layers come in and give you a result as the density change. We'll be looking at this more practically in our demonstration, so don't worry about that. So the incident sequence as well. So we have the where we can say, for instance, there is a certain crime that is happening that is repetitive, we can have that in a sequence and we can analyze it, and we can use the incident path as well to show that the link between the incidents. And we're going to look at that, of course, in the practical demonstration. And we have another section which you can share this analysis that you've done on the web, and using our ArcGIS online. Of course, the executive can now even access the same dashboards and also make decisions using the same. So let's go now to the demonstration, where I'll now be taking you through one by one some of the things that we've talked about in this presentation. So I hope you can see my screen. All right. So first, we want to talk about enhancing attributes. So this is the ArcGIS Pro interface, and as you can see, as I talked about earlier, it has a ribbon like the Microsoft Word. You can see you have map here, insert, analysis, view, and additionally to this, we have this crime analysis tab toolbar added here. And this crime analysis is an add-in, which of course you can, will share links where you can actually go and get a guide of how you can also add this to your desktop application, right? So the first thing that we want to do here is, for instance, look at enhancing the attributes, where you can extract data paths to a field, all right? So let's look at our attribute table here. So let's just focus on the date. So this is data that I've added to my map, and you can see on arrest date right here, right? You can see that it has the date format just listed there as the day, the date, and then we have the month, the date, the year, and then the time, all right? So you can actually come to enhance your attributes and then extract date paths to field, and then you can choose your input data to be the arrests made, and then you can say, I want to add, for instance, a weekday field, an hour, month, day of the month, and even year. And then once you run this tool, let's just look at our output. So you'll realize that I've already run this tool, and I'm not running it real time because we have had challenges where, for instance, it may take a lot of time to load, and the concept is what is very key here. So you can see that after running the tool, we have the hour added, we have the arrest date added, we have the day and the year, and this really helps you out to focus on, well, this day, this is the hour this is the number of hours that we reported crime, and on this month, these are the statistics are looking like. And then of course on this was the day 24 of month X, and the year was 2018. So when you break them down into different fields, it becomes really easy for you to do your analysis. All right. So the next thing that I'd probably love to look at is appending attributes from polygons. All right. And here, for instance, you can have the precincts. All right. So the precincts are basically a geographical area which maybe are patrolled by a police force. Some people use this term interchangeably. Some people can also use this term to mean maybe the main police station in a certain region. So you may, for our presentation today, we'll be using the geographical area kind of description to define police precincts. All right. So let's say you want to add maybe the name, all right, as a field, and then say I want this the crimes happening in this area, I want to know the name of that precinct and what have you. And you can see also in your attribute table, if you run that tool, let's just go to the last tool where you can see the station name right here, and you can actually see that in this precinct, this is where we had this number of crimes and what have you, and this can really help you narrow down to the area of interest, and even if it's sending more police force to that area, it can really be easier. So I'd like now to go to the 80/20 analysis tool, and as I talked about earlier, this tool shows you the highest volumes of calls per service. So these are calls that have been made by people to the police service. And now, once you have all these calls, you can actually narrow down on the volumes, and this can help you reduce officer workload. For instance, now an area where there are more calls, you can actually send more police to that area in particular. So the first thing that we have done here is, first of all, we have selected areas that have all those calls, all right? And then we can now see that in our outputs, after now running our 80/20 analysis tool and having our input as, for instance, the calls, all right, and then the attributes that we want to preserve, for instance, is the full address, all right? So after selecting those and running, you can actually see that the result that comes, you can now see that there are areas that show, using now the graduated symbols, you can see the areas that have more calls and more demands, and you can even see that has been represented also in percentage, and that is very important for your analysis, and it really helps you with the decision-making aspect, especially. All right. So another new tool that I'd like to look at is the incident count. All right. So let's just open our incident count map. So on the incident count tool, you may really want to, first of all, select the polygon, all right, of choice. So the police precinct in this case, and then you, for instance, say the arrests that were made in 2018 as your point data, all right. And then once you run the tool, you can now, let's just highlight the input and now have our output. So you can see that now all of a sudden you have the incident counts that are well distributed. We have, for instance, in this region, you can see we have 20 incidents that happened. We have 44 incidents that happened here, all right? And now, based on this, you can also now go ahead and make decisions. For instance, when you are assigning roles to the police officers, you can actually use this to your advantage, all right? So after knowing the incident count and what have you, we have also the percentage change. And for the percentage change, I'd like to begin by first taking us back to the selection by date and time. So if you've been, for instance, using ArcGIS Pro for a while, you may not have noticed this tool because it's not out of the box. So this is a tool that comes as an added advantage with the ArcGIS Pro, where you can actually select by date and time. And when you select by date and time, it really helps you to narrow down to certain, for instance, small ranges, and this can help you in your analysis by making it really easy, right? So, and sorry for that. So under input features, of course, we can you can come and say we want to analyze violent crimes and that happened in 2018, and we want to, for instance, come here and say the date that they were reported. All right, so you can actually come and say select by date, and here we have a couple of options where you can decide to select by date range, by single date, by recency, or by comparative time period. So there are two that I'd like to discuss here because these terminologies can be a bit confusing. So we have by recency here, and the selection by recency basically means, for instance, let's say, let's talk of maybe 28 days. All right, so this will be the 28 days, the crimes that happened recently in the 28 days, all right? So if you, for instance, select by recency, then that's what you're targeting. Another selection here is by comparative time period, where you can actually now decide to, for instance, analyze the 28 days that happened before the recent 28 days. And you can have these two analyzed and maybe have the percentage change now done. So that's why it's I figured it's very key to bring in the select by date and time in this section. So you can actually select by time of day. So let's say a crime happened from a certain time to another time, maybe from 4 to 5. You can come here and select that by time. All right. So you can select by the day of the week, maybe to just see maybe specific days, how many crimes happened on Tuesday, how many crimes happened on weekends only, how many crimes happened on weekdays, and so on. You can select by month, maybe to focus on February or March or any month that you want to focus on. And of course, you can also select by year. And this comes in handy when you have a couple of years data. For instance, maybe you've just migrated to from manual systems to digital, you've digitalized all your data. You may have data of many years and you want to focus on a specific year. You can actually come and select the year. So after those selections, of course, when you run the tool, let's go to our output data. So you'll figure we have the Q3 and the Q2 crimes. So of course we've separated them using the recent and the comparative, where now we have the current crimes and then we have the Q2 crimes. So in the symbology, you'll notice the Q2 are smaller than the Q3, which are a bit larger in size. All right, so let's actually now proceed to look at now the kernel density. All right, so sorry, the percentage change. So if we just highlight this and then now look at that, you can now see the percentage change. So in Q3, when we're comparing, for instance, so let's just run the tool. So you can come here and say the current period is Q3, and then the previous period is Q2, and then you want the police precincts to be the comparison polygon. So you'll realize that in some areas which are appearing as bluish, sorry, the red is not very bright as I expected it to be, but this the red shows more. The red shows increments of crime in a region, while the bluish symbology shows the reduction of the crime or the percentage crime in certain areas. All right, so you can see this area, for instance, there's been a lot of reduction. Same to this area, we have this area right here, and then we can see this area, it really increased as well. All right, so we can now, using this analysis, make certain insights and decisions as well, and say that this area has really seen violent crimes increase by 7.7%, and therefore we need to, for instance, put more resources in that area. And then, having said that, let's now look at another tool, which is now the density analysis. All right, so density change. And here we can actually begin by maybe talking about the kernel density. So here we have calls from, for instance, different calls that have been made, and you can actually come here and say, so you'll now select maybe the daytime calls and, for instance, the nighttime calls, and this separation helps you to now do your kernel density. And let's just have a look at that. For instance, now for the daytime, you can now see that here we have that symbology. So let's just unhighlight the daytime here, so that let's now focus on the kernel density. So let's just highlight this. So you can see that we have the nighttime kernel density symbolized here like this, and then we have this right here appearing as the daytime density. And one thing to note is when you're running your kernel density on the selection, make sure the parameters for both current period and previous period are exactly the same. So using these kernel densities as now your input data, you can now do a density change. And that's why in my presentation I was talking about now I was not talking about the density change which actually uses your kernel density. And you can see that here we have the nighttime cell density, and you can actually now come to the raster and now, for instance, choose the previous as the daytime, rather as the current as the daytime, and then the previous as the nighttime. And then this way, when you run your analysis, of course, now you can get your hotspot analysis here, where you can see that these regions here get hotter in the nighttime, and these areas here get cooler in the nighttime. So you can actually figure that this area experiences more crime during these times of the night, and these areas are actually we have solved crime more in these areas, and this can actually determine the decision making that you decide after now sitting and looking at, for instance, this analysis. You can make the decision to send more police force to the area that is actually getting hotter, right? That is getting more crime occurrences. And therefore, after doing this, now let's look at the another tool, which is the incident sequence. And so let's say you have crime happening, right? So in this specific occurrence, let's look at motor vehicle theft. So you want to order how events have occurred, to plan on operational responses, to catch the guy that is now, for your using your investigations, you've realized that this is a series. This is probably the same guy doing the same crime, and you want to catch this guy. So this can help you plan the operational response, all right? So let's assume that, for instance, let's just click on the tool. So you can have the input point as the motor vehicle theft series. You can see it's symbolized on your map right there. So you can actually sort this using the reported data, right? So you can say that we have this specific crime happening consistently, and you want to see a pattern. And that is the thing that we talked about. Another advantage of ArcGIS, it helps you to actually come up with patterns, which will now help you to make a decisive actually conclusions. So when you run this tool, you now get this as your result, and you can see that this is the pattern. So this is the first area that this motor vehicle theft occurred, and then we have the second area right here where this crime occurred again, and then this theft went on to occur here in this location, came back to this region, and you can see a pattern, all right? And you can see that we have a symbol of points and a line to show where it happens, one after the other occurrence. And this can really help you to come up with a solution to the same, because you can know using this pattern. Of course, now when you're doing pattern analysis as well, you can now say that we want to actually capture this person here next. All right. So another tool that I'd like to look at is incident path. All right, and this is an improvement now of the incident sequence, where we can say it's a comparison between now two theft cases, and we are now looking at the theft case and the recovery. So a car has been stolen, and then a car has been found in a certain location, but there is a pattern to it where we are seeing that all these cars that are stolen are ending up in being recovered in one place, and that can now become your area of interest. All right. So under input point, we can have the motor vehicle theft, and then of course the destination, we can have the recovery location, and then the identifier, which is always a unique field to identify this kind of crime. You can say it's an offense ID, and for instance, for destination identifier field, you can also say it's an identifier ID as well. So when you run this tool, this is what you get, and you can see that the arrows are pointing from where the crime happened to where it was recovered, where the crime is happening to where it's recovered, and you can now slowly see that it leads to down. Many arrows are leading down to this area. So this area right here becomes the area of interest, and people who are stealing motor vehicles are ending up taking most of those vehicles here, and probably this is where now they are doing a lot of whatever thieves do. For instance, changing the color of the body, switching number plates. So this becomes the first area that police officers, when a car disappears, when something happens to a car, this becomes the area of interest, and you focus keenly on that area, and you'll realize it will really help you to solve more cases easily. So we can't really look at all the analysis tools in one session because we really wanted to keep this session within a manageable time period, but we have a couple of more tools like the space-time analysis, where you can actually create a space-time cube by aggregating points and emerging hotspots. We have the repeat and near repeat analysis, which is also very critical. And of course, we can have another session. This can be a first of many sessions, many other sessions where we can now look, we can look at more analysis tools, and two, we can even decide to focus on one tool in particular, which, for instance, after you give us your feedback, of course, after this session, you may be interested in one tool, and we can decide to have a session where we just focus on that tool and even explain it further. So for now, those are the tools that I'd like to look at in ArcGIS Pro. But further to this, let me just mention something on sharing information, where you can actually share this on a web map, and after sharing this on a web map, it can go to our ArcGIS online platform, and from our ArcGIS online platform, it can be accessed on mobile, on your laptop, and many other devices. You can also share it as a web layer, you can publish it, and after publishing it, you can use it to make a lot of web applications using ArcGIS Online. And let's just look at some of the solutions that Esri has made available to you to use for law enforcement. So if you open your browser and type in ArcGIS solutions, it will lead you to this page. And on this page, you can scroll down to solutions that are for local government. And under the solutions for local government, you can see that we have one for law enforcement. If you click this, you get this tab where you can have a couple of solutions here, and this is what we've been focusing on today: performing crime analysis. You can organize your foundational data, you can engage the public, and this engaging the public, let's for instance open it in another tab to maybe look at some of the activities that you can do. So you can actually create crime reports, you can view crime activities. The public can actually be enabled using these applications, and they're available to you. We really encourage you to visit this site as maybe GIS analysts in your departments, and explore some of these solutions that are available for you out of the box. All right, you can actually involve us, and we can customize, we can configure these solutions for you as well. And you have, for instance, the neighborhood crime reports here, where this is something that you can make available for the citizens. As a police force, you can actually make this available for the citizens, where they can be going to look at which area has added crime rates and what have you. And these are some of the solutions that we make available to you. You can actually develop tactical plans as well as part of these solutions made available to you, among many other things. Traffic fatalities, you can actually explore some of these. So I'm just taking you through this to just see some of the available resources to you that Esri has made available to you, that you can use for your own organizations, and this can also be customized. So I believe I want to end my presentation there, and therefore welcome any questions. You can raise your hand